Lieutenant General Charles Bouchard, thank you for taking time to meet with the Canadian International Council. I have a series of questions I'd like to ask you about the future of the Canadian Armed Forces and your experience in Libya. First, do we, the Canadian Armed Forces, have different perspective on the required capabilities after 10 years in Afghanistan? And are the capabilities developed in Afghanistan going to be useful to fighting future wars?
I believe we do, in fact, but when we look at capabilities, from my perspective, I think we have to look in greater than just one conflict or one slice of time, but rather perhaps over a 20, 30, or 40-year span, where we can make a better assessment of what is required in terms of capabilities, land, sea, and air, and joint capabilities as well. So from my perspective, the lessons and the capabilities and the experiences that we've gained in Afghanistan will serve us in the future as well. So are the experiences from Libya, but then again also so are the experience of the Balkans and what we've gained there. Because from our perspective, especially when we conducted the mission in Libya, we took lessons from many of those past theaters of operation, and we applied them as best as we could to fit the situation in Libya. So really, once again, from my perspective, as we look at future of conflicts and capabilities required, I think it's important that we look at more than one theater, but rather look at the whole, and then from there make a better assessment of our needs.
The United States has recently, due to budget constraints, has changed its focus and is going to be investing massively in its sea forces. Do you foresee the same thing for Canada? Should we prioritize one branch of the military over the other?
Well, if we go back to your first question and we look at what the future requirements and what part or what slice of time one looks into, I think that Afghanistan has shown us the requirements for a strong land force and special forces. Libya showed us the requirement for air power, or the ability to project power from the air and at sea. And therefore, as I look at this, and from our perspective, and I'm aware of the U.S. Initiatives, I think our perspective is to keep a balanced force that can provide and able to do that. I think when we look at the U.S., my assessment is not one of favoring one branch of service over the other, as much as perhaps making some realignments as necessary to fit the next decade as they look at it. From a Canadian perspective, I think a strong land, sea, and air special forces and a joint capability is important if we are to remain capable of operating where the government of Canada would want us to operate.
You commanded the successful NATO mission in Libya. In your opinion, should these types of multilateral efforts be the focus of the Canadian forces? Can you imagine a situation in which the Canadian military achieves something on its own?
I think we have certain successes in a more unilateral or in a small organization, whether it's the experience we've had in Haiti, or if we look at any conflicts that are greater scopes, I think doing any operation or conducting operation within an alliance is probably a good way to go. But we've proven one thing, is that we can be part of an alliance, we can lead an alliance, so we can play a major role or a minor role depending on the wish of the government at the time. So I'm a strong supporter of NATO, I'm a strong supporter of NORAD, because through these multilateral and bilateral and multilateral organization, we can find that we can make a difference, make a strong difference, make a valued difference, and yet operate and find capabilities that may not reside in the Canadian forces, but could be used and could be brought in by other countries, as was the case in Libya, where various nations brought what they could to it, but together we were able to get the synergy of this group and produce a successful mission.
How does NATO's future impact the future of the Canadian Armed Forces? What do you see the role of Canada in NATO as NATO evolves?
I think NATO continues its evolution. The new strategic concept, from my perspective, was validated with the mission in Libya. The ability to provide operational support and conduct operation on short notice for a specific duration in various areas. There are over 10,000 troops deployed by NATO today in many theaters, whether it's Afghanistan, whether it was Libya or the Balkans or anywhere else that NATO is operating. So for NATO, I believe it continues its evolution. The new command structure will take into effect very soon, probably over the next year. I think it'll be interesting to see the meeting in Chicago and to see the direction it will take. But I know that at the completion of the mission, we submitted a series of lessons learned and experiences, and I know that these are being analyzed as we speak today and will be applied in the future.
What was the biggest challenge to protecting civilians in Libya during your mandate leading the NATO operations?
I think from my perspective, this was a NATO mission, but it was NATO plus. We had Arab partners, we had Sweden joining us as well, and probably one of the main challenge for any commander of a multilateral force is the management of these different cultures, various cultures, and how do you bring all of these players together? Some have got levels of readiness and capabilities that are greater than others, but how do you bring everybody, find the best in everybody, and apply it to the mission at hand? And for us, we open new doors to Arab nations to join a NATO mission, and I think it's very positive, both from a strategic, diplomatic, and military perspective. And it's the key resides in managing these cultures, learning about them, understanding them, and then finding the best in everyone and employing them to mission accomplishment.